So those who aren't here can watch on demand later. Hi, Keris, how are you?
Hi.
Hello. So thanks everyone for joining us. Please note we are recording today's session. And before we commence, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land where you may be tuning in from today. In Melbourne, the people of the Kulin Nation, and in Sydney, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, and pay my respects to the elders both past and present. Today we have our LawTech Hub mentor, Courtney Blackman, CMO of YBF Ventures, who will share insights and tips on PR and marketing on a small budget. You're in good hands, and you would have all seen Courtney in action with her seamless delivery of the LawTech Hub showcase last week. Thanks, Courtney. Courtney is very experienced in both PR and marketing, having worked across the globe, including London, the Dominican Republic, Canada, Costa Rica, and across many varied industries. Prior to living in Melbourne, Courtney founded and ran her own successful PR firm for 14 years in London and worked in publishing events. She's worked with startup companies in some of the largest brands and well-known faces in the world, and has helped manage some very large-scale events in London, Paris, New York, and Vancouver. So I won't take up any more of the time of today's session. I'll pass you over to Courtney. Thanks for joining us, Courtney.
Hello, hi everybody. Now can everybody see this screen that I'm sharing, kind of?
Yep, gotcha.
Okay, cool. And we are a small group, so if anybody wants to just jump in and engage or ask a question or anything, or if anything's unclear, just do it. We are a small group, so completely happy for anybody to interrupt and just jump right in. And like Sarah said, I've been doing PR and marketing for ages. My first kind of professional job was 21 years ago as the sales and marketing director of the World Trade Office in Vermont in America, and since then have worked in fashion, music, publishing, have been a television host, a publisher, an editor, have kind of worked across the full gambit of media and PR and marketing, etc. So excited to give you guys some tips. And again, I have worked with really small brands, you know, like a one-man band, so to say, in London, like a knitwear designer just working from her kitchen, to really huge brands and even representing countries. So really have kind of a full gambit of working with anybody and everybody. So obviously we're in a pandemic, so I'm just going to go over what has changed and what has stayed the same. So what's changed is we are in a new normal. Everybody has kind of gone through a digital migration, and most everybody lives online now, and is doing most things online, is purchasing more online. Everything's kind of digital. So we are in a new normal. And even though everybody's online, there seems to be a real focus on community and hyper local. So when you guys are thinking about your messaging and what you're doing, regardless of if you're speaking to an audience that's global or someone that's close, try to really tailor things so that they kind of have a really local/community feel, because that's really resonating with people at the moment and making them feel comfortable. And then one of the biggest things at the moment is trust. People are really sensitive at the moment, and I'm sure we've witnessed all of that with everything that's been going on over the past year with you know, the Black Lives Matter and climate change, etc. Cancel culture has crept up, so people are really paying attention to what's going on, not just with people, but with brands, and people are kind of considering brands almost as people, and looking at the way people react to what's happening in the world, and are expectant to know like what your values are and what you align with and what you care about. So think about your brand and what you stand for and what your purpose is and who you're partnering with and what kind of messaging you're sending out, because people really care about that kind of stuff at the moment. What has stayed the same is we're still always chatting to people, regardless of how much technology moves on. Whenever you're selling a product or service, you're not selling it to robots or inanimate objects. You're always selling to people. So when you think about communicating or marketing, you're still always networking and always making that connection with people. So don't ever forget that, no matter what kind of tools or technology you use. The end user that you're trying to get to give their money to you is a person. So always keep that in mind. And tools haven't changed that much. as far as the things that we can do that are kind of on a budget, it's still kind of looking at the same types of tools in the past couple years. So again, this is going to be quite broad because all of you are working on different types of projects. But if anybody does have anything in particular that you want to connect with after, or you want to have like a strategy session with me, very happy to meet up with anybody separately, individually, and have a chat. So when you are starting a marketing campaign or getting ready to chat to people, really think about what you're doing. So are you launching a product or a service? And does anybody know what the difference between PR and marketing is? Anybody? All right, I'll give you the answer. So
yeah. I'm sorry, Courtney. I was just going to say no, but I should.
Oops. Hold on, I lost you. I lost your sound. Hello? Hello?
Hey, you got us?
Oh, yeah, sorry. Yeah, it cut out for a sec. There you go. Yeah.
The comment was like, no, but he should. And that's, I can echo that. I probably should.
Yeah, so just the difference. So marketing is normally like you're trying to communicate with people to sell a product or service, where PR is when you're generally trying to manage your reputation and build your reputation. And I think in a lot of ways, those are really fluid, especially nowadays with so much online and the way people kind of are reacting to brands, that they do kind of, juxtapose a lot, but there is kind of minute differences between the two. But when you are starting to kind of do a marketing thing, think about what you're launching. Is it product, service? Are you looking to get leads? Are you just looking to build awareness? Are you trying to acquire customers? Or is it customer service? And you can then develop your branding or your messaging around that. And then try different testing and see what works. So a lot of the tools you should be using, you should be able to test, and then you should be able to get loads of statistics nowadays on what's working, what's resonating. So some of your and what's great about everything being kind of digital nowadays is you can test lots of things and then modify as it goes. Like there's marketing and comms are constantly evolving. So don't be afraid if something doesn't land right or whatnot, because you can always shift and change and use the data that you're getting to figure out what messaging is working with your customers and what's not, and then just shift. So do a lot of testing, A/B splitting, especially that's around more like EDMs or email marketing, where you can kind of test different messaging with different groups and see what kind of messaging works for people. And to figure out who your customers are too, do a survey, figure out who they are, what are they watching, what are they reading, what are they doing for fun, and then you need to follow your customers. Like you need to figure out where they are because you can't talk to your customers if you're not in the same place they are. And that's thinking about like what social media platforms you're on, where you're looking at them as far as sending electronic direct messages, what kind of events that you're going to, what kind of events you're trying to speak at, like figure out where your customers are and go there. And again, just going back, like what does your brand stand for? What are your values? Super, super, super important. And then always think about your tone of voice because that's going to resonate across everything that you do, from email marketing to social media, to, if you write a guest article for someone, etc. Think about your tone of voice because you want that to spill over into everything you do, because that's going to be the essence of who you are as a brand. Scooching on, I like to tell people to think like an editor. So nowadays we have so many tools at our disposal to talk to people and kind of have lots of touch points to talk to people in lots of different ways. So I like to say think like an editor. And whenever I used to judge journalism competitions, what we had to look out for was if the journalist was informing people, educating people, or entertaining people. And if you think about your own marketing plan or what you're doing, that's what you should always be looking for. You want to inform people of what your product is or service is. You want to educate them if they don't know, and constantly repeat that message in different ways. And then you do need to entertain people, which just means it needs to be kind of wrapped up in a nice package. And think about even how you are receptive to marketing. Like, you kind of need to be entertained nowadays, especially people have just really, 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 really low attention spans. And especially during times of COVID, like our brains are just fried. Like, are, you could see something and forget about it in like a second later, so you constantly need to be kind of re-explaining your key messaging and re-delivering that key messaging in different ways. Always using the same tone of voice and consistency, because that's what makes you really sticky with someone, is having that consistency, and that helps build up trust too. If you're consistent with your messaging and you're consistent with your tone of voice and who you are. And again, that can always evolve and develop over time, but just as a starting point, really. So when you are kind of starting, and I had a look at everybody's website, and I don't know what social media people are on, and social media is really important. Does anybody on this call know how many people in Australia are currently using social media?
That'd be 95% of the population, I'd guess.
That's very close. So it's 79.9% of the population of 16 to 64-year-olds are on social media, are using social media, and that's really high. And it's almost it's pretty much at saturation point, because there's not really a lot of active people rejoining social media. So we're at a saturation point where almost everybody's using social media. And it's really important, and 75% of people are more likely to purchase or engage with a company that they're following on social media. So for some reason, just having that digital connection and following people on social media is really important. And one way you can get people to follow you on social media, which I don't think anybody is doing on this call, is having your social media on your website. So having your little icons on your website where people can follow you. In digital, you do have, I think you have Twitter and Instagram on your website. I would suggest putting LinkedIn as well, just because so many professionals, especially in Australia, tend to follow LinkedIn. So I would add that one, but I would just suggest everyone on here if you are using social media, put those icons on your website, because that's one way to start building it up. And again, for some reason, people just have that connectivity level with you if they are following you or have that connection with you on social media. And then does anybody know what the most popular social media is in Australia? Any guesses?
I'm gonna guess it's still Facebook down here with the aging population of Australia.
Now, I did put a little Easter egg on the front page of this. So it actually is YouTube at the moment, but only by a very small, it's only by 1%. So it is YouTube and then Facebook. And people do really like video, but in general, people still respond more to just pictures at the moment. But then video is really important. So it's just kind of interesting and fun and important to think about your mix of marketing, that what you're doing, to have both a video and still images. And people always resonate more with imagery or video than just plain text, especially on social media. So think about your kind of spread of social media that you're using, and again, think about where your customers are. If your customer base is people 60 and over, then TikTok probably wouldn't be a social media platform that would make sense to you, because it's primarily women and girls, and the majority of people are Generation Z and Generation Alpha. So that wouldn't make any sense for you. So think about the ones that make sense for you. And while all of these are free, what's not free is your time. So just think about what makes sense for you and what you can commit your time to, because once you start doing social media, in order to keep that consistency with your customers or people that are following you, you do want to keep it active. So you don't want to just let it go or only post something, once a week or once every 2 weeks. Like it's really beneficial to post as well. You can do some research on it too, to see what makes sense and see when your people, when your fan base or your followers are following or most likely to be active. But you definitely need to commit to something once you commit. So don't commit to something if you can't, because that could be a bit brand damaging. And then newsletters are a really important touch point too. We were chatting about this a little bit beforehand. You don't want to spam people, but it is a good touch point to check in with people that have signed up to actually hear from you. Like that's quite a gift if someone has, they're willingly saying, yes, communicate with me. What's not good practice, don't sign people up to your newsletters that haven't said, yes, I want to sign up. That's one way people will definitely immediately unsubscribe and probably never really want to interact with your brand again because you've broken a bit of trust with them. So just be really careful with that, and be careful with your content. People want to hear, they want to feel special. They want to know that they're getting communications from you for a special reason. Like, are you offering them something special? Do you have something new to tell them? Are you entertaining them, etc. And then also think about your website too. So a website's kind of like your nucleus of your brand. So whatever you're doing on social media or on newsletters, a lot of stuff links back to your website. So you really want to make sure your website looks amazing, and you want to kind of keep it kind of fresh and at the top of the Google search engine too. So does everybody know the difference between SEO and SEM? So SEO is search engine optimization. So that's just organically how your brand comes up on a Google search. And how you do that is you've got keywords that you normally put in. So if someone's searching for a keyword in your space, then they would hopefully find you. And how you build that up and kind of continue to get it building up and going up on the right pages is putting a lot of content. So having a blog option or a news section on your website where you're constantly repeating your keywords or those keywords that you want people to know you from. And then SEM is just search engine marketing. So that's where you're paying Google, so Google ads, so that you kind of land more at the top when people are doing a Google search. Does that make sense? Does anybody have any questions so far? Again, happy to chat with anybody if it's just.
Yeah, I had a quick question. Can you hear me now, Courtney?
Yes.
Yeah, my question was, so we're one of the things that it shows how basic it is for us at the moment. But one of the things I'm looking into at the moment is bidding on Google Ads.
Yeah.
We bid, but we never win. So, do you have any tips for, bidding successfully while also, not, breaking the bank? Because that's the situation I'm in at the moment.
It's really hard at the moment because everybody has kind of turned to, digital advertising, especially during COVID. Like everybody's digital, so everybody's trying to reach people digitally. You might want to try some different keywords. There's things called long tail keywords where they're just, maybe a three word keyword instead of just one word. So you may just want to try some different keywords that are like hyper specific to what you do. Instead of bidding on like the maybe more generic keywords that some of the bigger companies that will always outbid you on, because it's just really hard. Like everyone's using Google Ads at the moment. Everyone's using all digital ads at the moment, so it is a tricky space to be. But I would just try some of those longer tail keywords.
Thank you very much. One of the things that's quite, please don't share out of the group, everyone, but I think it's in a funny and a slightly concerning way is getting beaten on our own name as well. All of our competitors are bidding on our name, and actually it'd be super expensive to win. But the long tail ads is a good one because we can combine our name with our main keywords.
Yeah, and we have that too. Like we have a competitor that bids on our name too when they're doing their own advertising. So when someone looks up us, they go to them. It's very annoying. Welcome to Google.
Thanks, Courtney.
Building your audience, we kind of touched on this. So it's really understanding where your audience is so that you're not trying to find your key audience in places that they are not. Also, too, when you are doing EDMs, if you have built a database where you are email marketing to people, treat your database like it's your baby. So check it all the time. Make sure email addresses are up to date. If somebody has filled in like a newsletter form where they're opting in to hear from you, make sure you go through it and make sure all their details look okay, because sometimes some people will enter something like that and they'll put their name and surname in lowercase or in all caps or something. And then if you don't amend that and you then email someone, it looks like you've made the error because no one will remember that they did that. So it'll just look bad on your brand. So just always constantly be checking your own database so that it's as perfect as possible. Like your data is your friend. So quick things to marketing toolbox. I'll get to PR very quickly. So this is going to be a very quick one on both marketing and PR. And I'll send this around to Sarah so she can send it to people too. But it's just a quick page, which you guys will have, that'll have links on how you can do things yourself without spending lots of money. So video, I would suggest spending a day, maybe just watch it, or not even a day, half a day, just watching some YouTube tutorials on how you can make your own videos. You can make pretty cool videos on your own smartphone nowadays, or even if you buy quite a simple camera, you can make videos and edit things together. And there's pretty powerful tools that are free that can help you. So it's worth giving it a go if you don't have the budget to hire someone else to make video content for you. And then also, what you can do for audio, graphic design, there's a lot of really good programs out there to help you make really interesting ads or just kind of cool visuals that you can put up on your social medias. Anybody use Canva? Yes, Canva.
Yes.
And Canva's so handy too, because they have all those presets where it's like make a Twitter ad or make a this, and it's it's got the sizing in already. So you can get pretty crafty on that, and you can make your own GIFs and things like that. So I think that's a really good tool if you don't have a big budget, but you want to make things that are quite interesting. I've got links to where you can access copyright-free photos, so that's really important too. If you are going to pepper things with imagery, you want to make sure that you're not breaking the law by using images that aren't copyright-free. So Unsplash and Pixabay are quite good for free imagery. Also too, with just thinking about that as well, when you are using these free photo sites, a lot of people use them. So if you do want your own images that, are your own brand, it's always best to invest in that. But if you're doing something as basic as newsletters or things like that, where you just need some varied imagery that goes into someone's brain for 1 minute and is gone the next, then, sometimes those are quite good. Also have, music. If you're making videos where you need to have music, you also need to make sure that's copyright free, or else it won't last very long on YouTube. So YouTube Studio has a lot of copyright-free music libraries, so that's handy. Also, when thinking about scheduling for social media, again, all of this takes time. So if you are going on doing your social media and want to keep that up to date, etc., there's a lot of tools out there where you can schedule things. And then that's just like a better use of your time, because then you can just commit we'll schedule 3 tweets a day for a month and see how that goes. And you can use TweetDeck is really good. I also find TweetDeck really handy for kind of customer benchmarking and looking at what your customers are doing. So if you use TweetDeck and have that dashboard on your computer, you can put in all of your customers and kind of see what they're doing social media wise, and I find that really handy. Also, it's really good to see what your customers are doing on social media, so you're not reinventing the wheel, and maybe not so much looking at customers, but looking not at customers, but at competitors, and looking at what you're, someone that you really admire, or like someone that's, a little further along with you, see what's working for them and see what kind of messaging they're using. But I think TweetDeck's a really good one for that, because sometimes what they put on TweetDeck will then kind of resonate across all of their other social media. But it's just a really good tool for benchmarking and seeing what other people are up to. So keywords. Giles, if you go into Google's keyword planner, you can look at the keywords and see what might work for your brand, and then you can build some marketing around that. Google Analytics is really good for metrics. So seeing what who's visiting your website, what links are working, what aren't. You can also set up, Google Analytics pages and links. For all sorts of things, even for Twitter links. Like if you want to make Twitter links that link back to your Google and see how they're performing, then that's actually kind of handy. So I've got a little link for Google Analytics there, and also for just monitoring your brand in the press. Google Alerts is really good. Is anybody here using Google Alerts? Great.
Yep.
Oh yeah, so all it is you just go to Google Alerts, put your brand name in there, and anytime you're mentioned in the press or kind of on the internet, if it indexes, some people's sites don't index very quickly, so it's always worth just doing a Google search. But if it's like if it's like a press person that mentions you, then it normally indexes pretty quickly, and you'll get an actual email that says, oh, so and so is chatting about you. So it's just kind of handy to have. So I've also made a checklist. Again, I'll send this to Sarah. So if you are making your own marketing content, it's just a checklist to think about, like, is it visually appealing? Is it easy to understand? Like, you really want to make Obviously, you'll have a target market, but you really want to make whatever you're selling really easy to understand. And that, again, people have extremely low attention spans, especially at the moment. So really make things easy to process for people's brains. Is it on brand? I think on brand is a really good word to have, and quite an editorial word as well, or hyphenated word. So always think about what you're putting out if it makes sense for your brand. Sometimes something might be quite funny or silly and you want to share it, but think about if it makes sense for your brand and what your brand stands for from a values standpoint, or even what you're selling, or all of that. It's really important to always kind of be on brand, and it creates more trust. And then think about too, whenever you're pushing something out to the public, if it's highlighting your company in a leadership way. Like, obviously what you want to do always at all times is sell, and be trusted and be considered a leader in the space. So think about what you're putting out, and if it does that, if it makes you seem like a leader. Does it inform, educate, and entertain? Has it? And then always test across multiple platforms, especially in social media. 98% of people look at social media on mobile platforms. So whenever you're sending something out, you really want to test it and make sure that makes sense from a mobile platform, because so many people are just constantly on their phones, and 98% of people in Australia get their content on mobile. Call to action, really important as well. Do you all know what a call to action is? Just to repeat that, so if you are pushing out some content and you want people to react to it or do something, just always be like, hey, tap here or click here, just to give people that action point. Add in hashtags, but be very careful with your hashtags. A lot of people will stop following people if they use hashtags weirdly, so just be mindful. Don't over hashtag. Apparently on Twitter, you should only use 2 hashtags per post, otherwise it gets a bit messy. Instagram, you can kind of, make some lines and push them down. But yeah, just be mindful that your hashtags make sense. Always good too to have a colleague proofread stuff. Again, that's also thinking like an editor. If you want to build trust and consistency with your brand, then you want your content to be correct grammatically, as much as it looks beautiful and has a good message. You just want it to read correctly as well, because those kinds of little things can agitate people. So just to kind of sum up the marketing bit, always add value. So when you are pushing out content, make sure it has value. Don't just push something out because you want to or because you think you need to, because you are competing with so many people that are pushing out great content. So you don't want to push out something bad, because that can actually be negative on your brand. So always make sure you're pushing out something that's valuable. Be consistent. Again, that's just repetitive. Experiment. Don't be afraid to experiment too. The great thing about being a startup is you are small. So if you are experimenting a bit, it's not going to harm anyone. Like, people won't remember necessarily if you did this week or that week, especially during COVID, again, because everyone's brains are weird. So don't be afraid to experiment to see what works best for your company. And then constantly measure. Again, there's so many platforms and so many spaces for metrics at the moment. So just measure and make your performance, and change and tweak things to make sure you're always improving what your brand is doing. I'm going to move on to PR now. So we've got about 27 minutes. I'm a stickler for time, which if anybody was on that on that one call, you know that. So yeah, PR, I love it. Again, I ran my own PR company for 14 years, primarily in the creative spaces in music and fashion, which is really fun. And it was working again with small brands to large brands. And there's nothing, as I would say, like, fashion brands literally have no money but have to look big and exciting. So it was a really fun place to work in, and it really translates a lot, and I think, into the startup world too, because really shoestring budgets, but trying to be big and make a big splash and punch through. So so really PR is managing your reputation, and the way I see it is it's kind of 3 things. So media, so working with the press. Partnerships, kind of who you're working with so that you can elevate your brand, and then doing events, and that can be doing your own events and producing your own events. And I also think it's really important to constantly be scanning for events where you can sit on a panel or participate in some kind of a third-party event, because that then kind of lends to that leadership aspect of your brand. If someone else has invited you to sit on a panel, and then that also gives you social media fodder and things to put in newsletters, etc., on your website, all of that jazz. So get into the news. So there's so many different media things at the moment, which I think is really cool. You know, when I first started in PR, it was mostly just trying to get people into print, maybe onto TV, but now you've got print, you've got digital news, you've got TV, you've got radio, you've got podcasts. So there's a lot of things that you can kind of get into to get your brand more noticed. And what's really good, and it is, I think it's Avolca that is doing it. They've been in quite a lot of press, and if you look at Avolca's website, they have like all the press, like the logos of the press that they've been in, and have a press section. Maybe that's because they're in the UK. That was something that we used to do a lot in the UK as well. Is once you start getting into press, is putting those logos on your site so people know that, you know, people are chatting about you. People can link back and see what media you've been in, and that also really helps with brand trust, and even with customer trust, just knowing that third-party people are endorsing you, and that actually can spiral and snowball into other press, because other press might look at your website and be like, oh, so-and-so featured them, so they must be okay, and it kind of endorses you to keep that snowball effect up of people wanting to chat with you. So here's how we do press. So before I put this all in a press kit, but what you first want to do is build a media list, and some of you are already doing a great job with the press. Like I know in digital is in the media a lot. Is anybody else having good luck with press at the moment? Or I can't really see anybody's hands, so anywho, but we'll go over some basics. So media, what you want to do is keep a almost act like your own little media hub at the moment when you are a startup, and then at some point you might even hire a PR company to look after you. But when you're first starting, if you don't have a big budget, you can do it yourself, and sometimes the press even likes it better when they have that direct connection with someone. So what I would do at first is scan press and kind of benchmark yourself against your competitors and see what press they're getting. And start building a database of the media you would like to be in. Start looking at who some of the editors are, and put little notes too, you know, for instance, like the AFR, like when they write articles, they really like there to be kind of a money value to it. You know, they like to do, if anybody has raised money, if new money's coming in the pipeline, if I don't, anything the AFR does, they kind of like a monetary value. Startup Daily, kind of anything in the startup space. The Australian, there's a tech section there, so that's really handy if you're doing tech, which we all are. And then there's obviously everybody in the legal tech space. There's a whole separate set of media that you know, is legally focused. So make a database of all the press that you like, and really find who those journalists are that are writing in your space. And it's super easy to actually find journalists' email address. Like you can sometimes just Google it and type it in, or sometimes they have it on the actual news site. They might have a link that has their email address. If not, you might be able to find them on Twitter, where they might have their email address, because they're always looking for tips as well. Start following those people on social media as well. One of my top tips too is, if you start chatting with media, if you've never done it before, just be really honest. And, you know, I'm writing from startup. We just started out, or we've been going for a year. Here's what we're doing. And, you know, sometimes it takes a little bit of time for them to feel like they want to feature you. You know, it's sometimes they just want to feel it out that you've got a bit of longevity, because it's their reputation at the end of the day too. So you might send your first press release and no one picks it up, and that's completely normal. You know, if you sent a press release that said you just raised like a huge amount of money, then somebody definitely would cover that. But if it's just quite a basic press release about, you know, you've just launched a product or something and they've never heard from you, the likeliness that they're going to feature that is pretty slim, until you know, they want to hear from you. You'll kind of need to build a bit of rapport, so they know you've got some staying power, because at the end of the day, they don't want to write about a company that maybe nothing happens after they've written about them once. They want a long relationship that goes for a while too. So just bear that in mind, that sometimes it takes a little bit of time to build that kind of rapport. And some journalists like to be emailed, some journalists like to be phoned, some journalists like to be texted, and some are moody. Some maybe want to be texted, but then get annoyed if you do it because they weren't in the mood for it that day. So, so you just kind of have to feel it out and make notes. And a lot of times too, journalists just totally ignore you because they don't have time to write a polite note back and say, I'm not interested in this. So don't be offended if that happens. It's very normal for journalists not to write back if they're not interested. And you just have to kind of keep pushing, and don't feel like you've agitated them in any way because they haven't written back. They've just got a lot coming through their inbox. So just be patient and keep going. But it is all about building up that relationship so that eventually you have a relationship with journalists, and whatever you send over, they'll be like, oh, okay, sure, let's see what we can do here. But sometimes even when you have a relationship with them, it's just not right for their publication, and you kind of have to accept that as well. So when you have a press kit, whether you're just kind of announcing that you're a new startup or whether you're announcing a new product or service, you need to have a media release. So you want to have a grabby but honest title. So you want it to, you're actually trying to entertain and grab the attention to the journalists because, again, they're getting, hundreds of media releases a day. So you want to really grab their attention, but you don't want it to be, kind of scammy or too clickbaity, even though they do that. But you do want to kind of pull them in. Your press release needs to have the date, location, when you see a media release and it says the date and then like Melbourne or Sydney, and then release instructions. Like, let's say if you're getting in touch with someone a week before and you're launching a product, the following Tuesday, you might say that there's an embargo until that date. And sometimes I think it's quite good to either try to telephone or text or email someone and say, hey, look, got some really big news in the pipeline coming up in 2 weeks' time. Here's what it is. Would you be interested? Again, sometimes that takes a bit of time to have that rapport with journalists too, where you can kind of plant things, and sometimes they may just want to have the full release in their hands so they can see if it's worthy of something they want to write about. Your press release should have key information, supporting quotes. Journalists love quotes. If it is something that's really big news, they may want to get in touch with you and get a quote that's different than what's in the press release because they know that you're going to push that press release out to other people, so they want something different. So just be aware of that and maybe have some other quotes aside that kind of say the same thing a little bit different. Also, press release should have a link to imagery or videos, and make sure they're unbranded. So when press write about someone and they have imagery or video content, you're not paying for advertising, so it should always be unbranded and what is called lifestyle imagery. And then also at the bottom, who to contact for more information. And like I said, a lot of times when you send out a press release, they're gonna want to get back to you and either do a quick interview or get fresh quotes. So it's a bit different, especially if you're offering them exclusive. Journalists love exclusives, by the way, too. So if you do have really big news, when we have really big news, what I like to do is put a short list of where I'd like to see it. And I'll hit up my top, who's my top preference first and offer them an exclusive. If they don't get back to me, then I'll just go down the list and offer people exclusives. And then also in a press release, you'll just want a little bit of an about section that says who your company is, what you do. Images and video. I think it's really good in the press kit to have varied images. If you think about the audience for the Australian Financial Review is going to be a little more businessy than something like Startup Daily. So it's worth doing a photo shoot and maybe having some photographs of founder, CEO, and team wearing, collared shirts or nicer clothes, and maybe then some wearing your startup t-shirt with a logo, and just kind of having some varied options so that whatever media you're going into, there's some varied looks. It's also really worth getting lots of different images too, because then depending on how much media you get, visually it looks different everywhere, and that's really good. And then when you do start getting a lot of press too, then that's really beneficial to your brand from an SEO standpoint, because then you just start getting pushed in Google more because you've got third-party people that are linking to your site or chatting about you. So see it all, it's all kind of circular. But yeah, so images and video, get founder and CEO team together and really go crazy and have some fun with different visuals. And then those are the kinds of things that you can use in social media, you can use in your own newsletters, etc. But really important to have that variance. So collaboration, really important from a PR standpoint too. So these are so that's like thinking about who you might want to partner with and align your brand with. It might not be super commercial, but what it will do, sometimes it can be quite commercial, especially if it's for a very specific commercial product or something. But sometimes it's cool to maybe run a campaign with a company that's very similar to yours or complementary. And then you guys can kind of play on each other's customer base. So even just like the partnership with Lander and Rogers and YBF, we're completely different companies, but we're both in the tech space. You know, we're running a tech hub. They're a law firm, but together we've built the LawTech Hub. So it works for both of us. We have a lot of shared values. And then it's bringing, you know, our different audiences together in a very different way. So think about if there's anybody that, you know, your brand can connect with and do something and collaborate with. And collaborations, again, could be like a product or service, or you're doing something together, or you could do an event. You know, you could do a one-off event with a couple of companies that maybe could be complementary to each other and invite people along to a panel talk of how, you know, your company is working with the cybersecurity company in the tech space and what that means. And it's just drawing more people from a really wide audience together and introducing your brand to new people that may not have heard about it before, which is always good. Collaboration, so become an expert. So again, just going back on that, which is kind of PRE and marketing. So always wanting to kind of position yourself as an expert, because that's going to lend, you know, credibility and trust to your customers. Also, the media will be attracted to you. So again, always kind of scan if there are events that you can participate in. You could pitch yourself to be a speaker. You know, if you see something where it's like, oh, you know, I'm really doing something in that space, don't be shy to like hit up with people and say, hey, do you have any speaking positions left? I'd love to sit on a panel, because you never know. And once you start getting on panels and doing those kinds of events, then that is quite attractive to the media. It can be very attractive to customers, and it also gives you content for social media, for your website, all of that jazz. So think about that, and as well as kind of scanning for events that you can participate in, scan for awards. You know, winning an award can put you in a lot of places too, and, you know, get press for you. And again, that attracts media. It also gives you content for all your different platforms as well. So always kind of keep a lookout for things that you can get involved with. And there obviously are lots of events for the legal tech space specifically, and then there's a lot of just tech events in general. So it's worth just seeing what you can be involved in. And everybody on this call, like, you can join up together and do, I think actually we are doing something for Digital Innovation Festival, where a few people are coming on board and doing a panel. So like things like that, that's awesome. Do lots of those, like no one's stopping you. All it takes is time and effort and marketing. So I'm going to wrap it there and go into Q&A time. So does anybody have any questions that I can ask? I feel, let's see. So somebody asked me a question that wasn't here. Shavin wasn't here. So approaching journalists. So we've gone over that pretty significantly. And common pitfalls to avoid when approaching PR. Yeah, I think just it's hard to know what the pitfalls are until you figure it out, because I think the pitfalls in PR are figuring out how to communicate with journalists, and you kind of don't know what they are until you interact with them a first time to figure out how they like to be communicated to. And then it's just keeping a really, really good database with notes about how certain journalists like to be communicated to. Because again, it's super varied. Some people like to talk one way, some people don't. They're all different people with different personalities and different preferences. So just bear that in mind. But I'm going to turn it over. Any questions from anybody?
I had a question actually. I can't see if anyone else has got their hand up, so apologies if I've just cut across someone. I guess I've got, it's kind of a dual-pronged question, Courtney. You know, we're on a shoestring, both when it comes to time and also money. In terms of kind of time investment and money investment, what would be sort of the first, the top, couple of things for each, each of those types of investments that you would recommend? Because one of the key things, for us is just prioritizing with what we have. So yeah, I mean, we've got a couple of preconceptions, but I'm sure we're not right.
Well, Giles, do you have any data around where your customers are coming from at the moment?
So we use a customer relationship management software called HubSpot.
Yes.
And
yeah.
one of our big focuses has actually been trying to figure that out. At the moment, really, the only thing that we have conclusively is sort of whether they're inbound or outbound customers. We've tried to sort of figure out whether they are, I guess, sales qualified leads or marketing qualified leads, i.e. whether they've come as a result of marketing materials that we put out or not. But we are struggling to attribute that quite a lot. I would say that one thing we do know for certain is our customers seem to live on LinkedIn as opposed to any of the other mainstream social media platforms, and that's the only place where we seem to get inbounds other than directly on our website. So yeah, sorry, I can't give you more info than that, but that's what we have.
Yeah, no, that's good. I think, just because social media is such a prevalent tool for everyone in the world, like so many people use social media, then make sure you're doing a lot of organic posting, and I would do some paid posts on LinkedIn if that's where your customers are, focus on that at the moment. And then, because it does take a lot of time to put campaigns and clever little things together to post out. So if that's where you're finding your customers are, then focus on that for a bit.
Yeah, you make it sound so simple. Thank you.
Well, and you can try other things too. I mean, and there's LinkedIn, all of these platforms too, they've got algorithms, so like a very limited amount of people can see what you're actually doing. So if you find that LinkedIn is a real place for you, then I would put some money behind it as well, so that you're broadening your audience.
I guess. I mean, if I may, I've seen that someone else has raised their hand, but hopefully this is a really, really short question. I guess one question I'd ask is sort of, how do you know you're kind of ready to put money behind something like that? Because one of my real hesitations is, like, we're doing fairly well organically on it, but I worry that we don't have kind of something that's an advert yet, because advert worthy. So I guess how do you know you're sort of, ready to sort of put money behind it, or do you not?
Yeah, well, I think you'll know when you're ready to put money behind it. I think if like you're saying you're doing quite good organically, then that's awesome, because that would be everyone's dream to do quite well organically on LinkedIn. So if that's your case, then you might not even need to put money behind it organically, and just wait a bit until you're not on a shoestring budget. But if that's working well for you now, then just carry on with LinkedIn. Because LinkedIn is awesome. Like that is where you're going to get a lot of qualified, really professional people. And if you don't need to put money behind it, then all the better for you.
Giles, I've done a bit of work in the LinkedIn space as well, especially around the paid campaigns. And probably my biggest piece of advice is you have to be brave. Like dabbling in paid campaigns and then being like, it's not working, and we're flushing money down the drain. It kind of doesn't work, right? You got to be all in on it. You got to collect that data. You've got to refine and revise your messaging, but ultimately you've got to turn the tap on and leave it on, mate. And I've seen businesses, small startups, succeed greatly just by being ballsy with it, to be honest.
All right, you're giving me the confidence. Thanks, guys.
Do it, Giles.
Any other questions from folks?
I just have one question. I was just wondering, Courtney, with regards to the statistics around the use of social media and I guess the distribution of the different social media channels, does that change across rural, regional, remote communities, or is it consistent across the board, or is that something that you haven't
Yeah, that's a good question. Most statistics that I find, because I read statistics all the time, and most of it is Australia based. I actually haven't found anything that's regional, but most of it tends to be just nationwide.
Okay.
But that is a really good question, which now when I'm finished with this call, I'm going to go try to find
We might try and find it too. I just thought if you knew off the top of your head, that would be great, because we do a lot of work and are planning to do a lot of work with communities in rural and remote areas. So it'd be great to see what kind of usage they have on the social media side of things as well.
And you would be perfect. Like right now, people really are into those hyper local community driven campaigns. So that would be great for you. And with Facebook and link or Facebook and Instagram are really good at really pinpointing extremely specific hyper local areas. So that would be quite good for you. And also what's helpful with Facebook and Instagram, because they're both owned by Facebook, is you can make the same ads in Facebook and Instagram and share them. And if you don't want them to appear on your main feed, you can do dark ads. So that just means you're paying for an ad that people will see. It'll get pushed out to what you're paying for, but it won't end up on your main feed if you're trying to keep your main feed, looking quite organic and.
Oh, okay, that's good to know.
So I always find that really handy. So dark ads, so you can do that advertising, and it just won't end up on your like beautifully curated page.
Local radio, Chels.
True too. Yeah, actually, that's a good point.
Right, come on, Courtney. Did you mention radio? Actually, you might have been radio. Might have been.
It was like hidden in one little page, but yeah, radio would be great for you too from a community standpoint.
Yeah, for sure.
And there are just so everybody knows too, from a PR standpoint, there are a lot of like digital television shows now that are really geared towards startups. You've got Ticker TV that's geared towards startups, which actually started their life out of YBF Melbourne. So they were first born in YBF Melbourne and then have just grown and grown and grown. And then Startup Daily also has OzBiz TV. And they're always looking for content. Like they literally don't say no to anything. So if you feel like you have anything that is newsworthy, just hit them up, because they normally say yes to anything and everything. But obviously that's self-selective too. You need to think about what you're doing, because that's your brand too. You don't want to just go on TV and talk about anything. You want it to really focus on your messaging, like what you want for your brand. But I would say OzBiz TV and Ticker definitely worth kind of cutting your teeth from a television perspective, because they are always looking for content.
Thank you.
Any other questions, folks?
Courtney, I've got one. Just around going back to like planning content. There are a lot of tools out there, but do you recommend any tools for putting together content calendars?
Yeah, so there are like content calendars out there that you can download, or you can even build your own content calendar if you don't have the cash to splash on like a functional content calendar. We even do one on, we kind of have a mix where we use an Atlassian calendar. As well as a weekly Excel calendar that we make just for kind of basic content. But like on our Atlassian calendar, we kind of map out the entire year of all the big events that are happening that we can align with. And then every week we have a calendar where we put in all of our content across all of our different social media channels that we use. And then that gets edited by multiple people to make sure it's grammatically correct and fun and entertaining and on brand and all that jazz. But I think, and I thank you for bringing up a content calendar, Karis. I think anybody that's on here as part of thinking like an editor, have a content calendar, because it really helps you plan your communication strategy for an entire year. And if you can't, map out an entire year, at least map out 6 months and really align your brand with big things that are happening. If you want to align yourself with Pride Month, with NIDOC or NAIDOC week, anything like that, pop it in that calendar so that you can create content. Always be thinking of things that are coming up so that you can create relevant content. But always align your brand with events that actually make sense for you too, because you don't want to you can't afford to align yourself with everything from a time stamp. But do what makes sense for your brand.
Courtney, I know you're a stickler for time and we've got a minute to go. Very quick question. On LinkedIn, you mentioned Hootsuite has been one of the platforms to help you manage that. Does that allow you to schedule posts to go out on LinkedIn?
It does now. We haven't tried it. Like it's just LinkedIn's always been a tricky one, but Hootsuite does now allow you to schedule on LinkedIn. So it's worth giving it a go. I think anything is worth giving a go, especially as a startup. Like try anything, and figure it out for you.
Yeah, look, I just find that like a lot of the time the things that come to me, they want to post, come to me at like 11 o'clock at night. And I'm like, well, you know, I got to somehow figure out how to sort of make note of that. And look, it's not hard, but it'd be great if I could kind of like get that down and then tick it off and mentally move on to the next thing.
And this doc I'm sending you, it has like different scheduling tools like TweetDeck, Hootsuite, and like Facebook and Instagram. You can schedule from Facebook. So
yeah, thanks.
Yeah. Does anybody TikTok for anything?
No.
Okay,
any last questions? No. Well, thank you, Courtney. I'm sure I can speak for everyone in saying that was really helpful and insightful. And as I mentioned at the beginning, Courtney is one of our LawTech Hub mentors, which means you have the opportunity to tap into her wealth of knowledge. So she's selflessly given up her time for our residents. So please, you can contact Courtney via the LawTech Hub website where her contact details are. And a couple of little housekeeping items. We have the Investor Pitch 101 and fundraising with Niels coming up on the 25th of August at 4 p.m. So please join that session. And also this week, we've been collating all the information that you've given us through your wish list sessions. And as part of that, we really want to make sure that we're giving you the sessions that are most meaningful to you. So we're going to be using that content coupled with a survey that I'm going to send out during the week to really hone in on what sessions you'd like to hear from us. Time's ticking away. We're already in August. So please do take 2 minutes to fill in that feedback form on the type of sessions you would like to see for the remainder of the year, as that'll make sure that we're creating content and sessions that are most meaningful to you. So thank you, everyone. This session is recorded and I will be posting on the website and emailing out the slide deck to you in the next couple of days. So thanks again, Courtney.
Thanks, Courtney.
Thanks so much, guys.
Sarah, thank you.
Thanks everyone.
Bye.
Yeah.
Bye.